Hello, hello.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm so good, and welcome to everybody who's about to join or is joining from YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, everywhere we have, and also our platform online where we are educating people on how to hear God's voice. Bob, what have you been up to this week?
It's been a busy week. I have a whole myriad of details that I'm having to deal with, and I'm not the swiftest person on details. So I'm a little bit out of my wheelhouse.
Well, you are, yeah, you win at life, though. I'm always impressed with how many things you juggle and manage, and you still are on time to everything and have full voice and full life and everything. I have good news. I turned in my next book that's coming out in January
Oh,
today to the publisher, and we
that's
named it. And it was really fun because can you imagine we had a book I wrote for the last however many months with no name, like trying to figure out what is this that I'm writing as we're going.
what
Yes,
is
it's
it? Do we have a name for it? A working title?
I can't tell you because they have to have registered and stuff, but it's a book based on a series of encounters I had for over 15 years. That's going to help prepare people for the coming move of God, and it's what our Wired to Hear book was birthed out of, as far as my end, where I had given the message and the word several times that the next great move of God would the people who were going to be leading it or experience the most of it would be in the marketplace or be in workforce or careers or entrepreneurs and so these encounters. If you ever read Keys of Economy, I know you did, but if you're watching right now, it was a book that gave you energy to read. Like a lot of teaching books take energy to read them, but Keys of Economy, from what I've gathered from what people have reported, it felt like it was their encounter. They were living. It was entertaining. And this book is in the spirit of that. It's not a teaching book. It's encounter to encounter to encounter, and is really going to reshape the way people think about the heavens, about Satan, about God, about Jesus. It's really cool.
I can't wait to read it because, like, when we were talking years ago about what ended up being Wired to Hear, when you gave me that prophetic word that you had heard from God about the marketplace being the next major move of God, that got my attention.
Well, and I think it's getting a lot of people's attention because our podcast, for those of you who don't listen to it, it's Exploring the Marketplaces on Fridays. You can subscribe to it on Charisma Podcast Network or wherever you find podcasts. I was just reading even today, Bob, our podcast this week for a whole week was like number 12 in China. It's in the top 50 in America for Christianity. These are for Christianity. It was in the top 12 of Singapore. It was in the top 10 in India for Christianity. And the thing about these metrics is Chartable and other sites capture them, but even your own podcasting services don't always capture how many downloads that equals. In some of these countries, it could be hundreds of thousands of downloads a day. And so it's really cool to watch that people are hearing our Exploring the Marketplace, and they're resonating within the Christian industry because they could be listening to Rick Warren, who I love, or Joel Osteen, or Joyce Meyer, as far as Americans who are putting podcasts worldwide, but they're listening to big old you, Bob.
Did we translate into Chinese? Because I don't speak.
No, these are all English-speaking country,
Okay.
like the English-speaking parts of the countries. And so, funny enough, in every English-speaking nation or every English-speaking group in the nation, we're charting right now, which is crazy for that podcast. I don't have the numbers yet, but I have the numbers coming from Charisma this week. We haven't registered our numbers for a few months, but we've had a few million downloads over the last 6 months.
That's crazy.
So it's crazy.
Okay, Candy Johnson Hale, am I a little bit louder now? She's from Canada, and we have Lancaster,
Yes.
and we have Georgia and Oklahoma and Maryland.
Hey, what about South Africa?
Houston, Texas, and Pennsylvania. Is my volume better now, guys?
Your volume's great.
All right.
Pittsburgh. Hey, Pittsburgh and Houston, Texas. And Glenn, who is our operator today, even said hi from Portland, Oregon. He just moved up to Oregon from Los Angeles and left us here, but he still works for us full time, which I love. And hello to everybody else. Hey, and Egypt. This is awesome. So one of the things that Bob and I love to do every Thursday, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook or you're on our platform or even Twitter, Periscope, yes, we still go to Twitter, Periscope, is that we love to hear not only where you're from, but if you're in a career, what it is. If you're a minister or if you're a business person, which is what our podcast is geared towards, and also these conversations are geared towards people who are either starting a business, entrepreneurs, or in a career field. We want to highlight stories and principles that are going to help you grow and thrive and hopefully spiritually 10x before you naturally 10x in whatever you're doing. So that's what we're doing right now. Thank you from Hong Kong and Philadelphia and Virginia, and Christine from Ontario, and Phoebe is doing healthcare right now. Phoebe made me think of the Friends reunion just now. I'm sure lots of people have said it to you. Patricia from South Carolina, and we have Kenda from Youth for Christ, and Paul, real estate. Nicholas, fitness consulting and profit. I love that together. That's awesome.
That's good.
Fashion
I,
with Patricia.
I know how much functional fitness you're going to do today prophetically. You can do it.
Well, you know, Paul talked about fitness so much because he was the man. He understood how to relate the spiritual journey to our physical journey, which is just so cool. We have people from London and public health care, and also Australia is back in the house. Yeah. Elementary music teacher. Yes, I have 2 girls who love people like you.
So, Shawn, hasn't it been cool as we've given away grants, you know, all these months, we've gotten to pray for businesses and showcase businesses. And now we've started this quest to consult with people instead of giving grants away, to offer consultation. And I think that if you're listening and you have a business or you're in a business and you have an issue you just need some wisdom we would like to help. And if you go to bowlesministries.com, there is a button or a tab or whatever you want to call it, a flashing light that says consultation or consult with Shawn and Bob. And if you press that button, you'll get something to fill out. And on these lives, we would love to help people with their businesses and issues they have. But today, if you have a question that you'd like answered, now's the time to send it in. Send it in on the private on the comments so that Shawn and I can answer, because that's what we're going to do today.
Yes, we're going to be answering questions, and also we're going to be giving away some of our books, Wired to Hear. So we're going to give one away to somebody on Facebook, one away to someone on YouTube, and one to someone on not Periscope, on the platform at the end of the broadcast. So we have about 25 minutes with you guys. Before we get there, Bob, sometimes people see us as hosts, but they don't get to hear our experience and how God's come through and spoken to us in business. Can you think of, even if it's one of the stories in the book, can you think of one of the stories of when God showed up big for you, and actually it was of major consequence when he showed up and spoke?
Yeah. You know, I'm not sure if the story's in the book, but I went with my team to a mediation, and when we got there, we went there in Goodwill. We flew up to Northern California, 4 or 5 of us, and we were in a conference room with all the principal players. And you know, once we sat down, this man started yelling at me. And
wow.
Telling me and my company and the company that we worked for that we didn't know what we were doing, and you know that we were the worst company in the world, and he kept yelling. And you know how when somebody's vein sticks out, this started happening to me. My face was turning red. And so, you know, because I grew up with an angry dad, I really got triggered. And so I thought, I've got 2 options right now. I can start crying, which I didn't want to do, or I could go over the table and, you know, physically assault him, which I didn't want to do. And in that moment, God interrupted my thoughts and said, or you could stand up and you could leave the meeting. So what I did was I stood up and I said I can't remember, this guy's name was Jim. Listen, we came here out of goodwill, and I'm not going to participate in a disrespectful conversation. So my team and I are going to leave this conference room for 15 minutes. And if you decide that you would like to participate in a conversation with goodwill, we'll come back.
Wow.
And so we walked out, and the members of my team were like, you know, let's get on the plane. Let's get out of here. You know, let's call the lawyers. Let's call fire down. And it was really, really, but the Lord had spoken to me, you know, that I should do this. And so I didn't know what was going to happen. And 15 minutes later, we walked back in, and before we could sit down, this man apologized to me and told me he'd been under a lot of stress and they didn't operate that way. And less than 10 minutes later, we came to a financial resolution.
Wow.
Big big issue that we'd come to solve. So it was me over all these years in my life practicing, kind of hearing the voice of God in good times and bad times. And so I was ready in a stressful situation to hear the voice of the Lord when, there was a third option there, because the only two options I knew weren't going to work.
I love that so much, because I think of just every time you had to settle a conflict or mediation or pre-mediation before, how you had that as kind of a prototype story of God will come through.
Yes.
Because you've had some other times where, as a contractor, I know that people don't always pay on time, or you have to hound them for payment at times, or they want to change, their mind on how they pay you or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you have a God story that kind of anchors you in, that's amazing.
Tell me about one of yours. I mean, I know a lot, and I'm sure all the listeners know a lot, but see if you can pull one out.
No, I thought of like when I do some creative management and production. So I was a producer of a video game for Universal Studios and the story director. I was hired as a story director, but then they asked me to produce the whole thing. And it was an independent company that worked on the Universal Studios campus in Orlando, Florida. And they had hired a programming team. They'd never done a video game, but they'd done a lot of 3D animation for Batman movies and other kinds of movies for Warner Brothers and other companies. So it was a AAA kind of video editing group, and they'd done some computer work, but not a full video game. So we were hired to do a fighting game, and we had a really cool engine, and we had, like you could either make your own engine or you could fast track the process by buying one. And we did that. And so the programming team came on, and they were really aggressive. And this was like their dream. They wanted to do this with all their heart. And we had a local programmer, and then we had programmers at I had a local one with me, and then we had programmers there. Uh-huh. And when I got to the programmers there one day, I'd go about once a month and manage for 5 days. When I got to the programming team, they were so far behind everybody else. And I said, I just don't know what this is going to take. So I met with a couple of their video game groups, and they all told me, well, we're using 5 to 25 programmers, and we had 3, and they've never done video games before. Wow. So I went to them and I said, we need to hire another group. I found another video game company that can actually hire their programmers to us for the season, and we're going to have to let you guys go. And immediately, instead of just going, this is so sad, this is that's always hard no matter what, right? But instead of saying this is so sad, they said, we're suing you. This is our game. I don't know. It was a bit bizarre, like all 3 of them. This is our game. This is our dream. You're taking it away from us. You're supposed to be a Christian. And I was given orders from the investor and Universal that we had to let them go because they'd never done a video game. They were like technical app programmers or whatever. So I was in that place of getting assaulted for my Christianity, and these are good guys, and I like them, and all of a sudden we get assaulted. Then we get served papers like they're going to sue us. Wow. And I remember asking God, what do you want me to do in this? And he said, I want you to appeal to their hearts, not their minds, because their minds are distorted out of disappointment. Mm-hmm. This is something that they always wanted to work on in Universal and on like a video game, a AAA project. And so I want you to appeal to their minds and their hearts. And so he gave me a strategy on what to say to him, and I called each one of them individually, which is really risky. Yes. And by myself, without a mediator, I called each one of them individually, and I told them just what was in my heart and kind of walked them through the process, and then shared my faith journey of what I'd gone through to get to that point. And they were so impacted, and it healed something, that they dropped their lawsuit towards the investment company. They didn't have one towards me personally. They dropped one to the investment company into the studio. And they just disappeared. And years later, one of them came to me and said, I was so idealistic, so unrealistic. I can't believe I thought that we could sue or do so. We're just per hour. They were on contract per hour as programmers, and they were Christians. And all the other people in the company weren't Christians. So they just thought these guys were crazy and crazy Christians. And this guy got to work with 2 of them years later, 2 of the people who were kind of the heads that had judged them. And he worked with good effect and effort and ethics. And he redeemed the situation for them because they thought all Christians were crazy except for me. Yeah. And he redeemed it for him because he's like, yeah, I was really immature then. I had a lot of growing up to do. And it was just cool. But I feel like if I hadn't have gone through that, there would have been a 3 to 5 year battle for this company over something that there was no loopholes. They wouldn't have won, but there would have had to be mediation, or they were just attacking. They had something demonic happened. And so I feel like, in those practical situations, God is so good. The second one I want to tell real fast, just real fast, is that when I published my second book, it was the Keys on the Economy book.
Uh-huh.
And with the publisher I was with, they made a mistake on all the chapter titles up top were all misordered, but the book itself was, you could read all the way through. Just the chapter titles didn't match the chapters. So they called me up and they were devastated because they caught it after 3,000 printings. No, 5,000 printings of books. So they had 5,000 misprinted books. They said, we can't bring these to market. We're eating this cost. It was probably about $25,000 for them at that point because they were supposed to do a complete run of like 15,000 or something, and they stopped it and they rebooted and the whole thing. And in those days, printing was even more expensive the way it was handled. So they called me and they said, we're going to burn these books up. And I just had this like Holy Spirit moment. I felt the Holy Spirit come on me. And I said, can we give them all away?
Wow.
Can we give them? And they go, no, because we don't want these to be in the mass market. I said, can we give them to prisoners? And can we give them to places that speak English that are outside of our country? And they said, yes. So I got to give away 3,000 books to the prison systems all over America. I called my team, and I personally did, and my team did. We called all of these wardens and independent contractor prisons and like private prisons. And we were able to give, one prison had 300 prisoners get it at once. It was already going through a Bible study and they loved it. I had prisoners who still write me letters because they read my book and they started a business after prison. Like one guy started a bread company after prison, and he's doing really well in his region. And he's like, it was because of your book 10 years ago that I had a vision that I could be resourced from God. And I'm like, it was one of the greatest gifts God ever gave to me to be able to give 5,000 books away.
You know what I love about the first story, Shawn, is your heart of reconciliation and the fact that you were vulnerable. And I think this is one of the things that we need to talk about in the marketplace is that being transparent and being vulnerable, although it doesn't make sense sometimes, generally it's the right thing to do. And the fact that you did that, you appealed to their humanity. And the second story is just I love that the Holy Spirit spoke to you. Yeah. Listen, I'm looking at a comment from Kate Alley on Facebook, and Kate, I want to applaud. She says, I do fundraising and God showed me it's more about being a bridge between the wealthy and the poor than just asking for money. How cool is that?
That's so good.
And I don't really have any other comment, Kate, except keep doing that more. That is really awesome.
I love that. Well, you guys can ask questions. I know we have a few of them on here. We're going to look through them right now and just check them out. But please ask questions about the marketplace. And Bob, someone did ask the question, what do you do and what do I do? And I manage some real estate, and I also mainly one project, and I also have our publishing that we do, and then we have our media, and then I also produce content for the entertainment industry for both faith-based, like I just did a TBN show that you can watch on Monday nights. It's called Discovering God. I'm working on a movie right now that's a kids movie, and then we're working on a mainstream series as well. And it's a mainstream movie for kids, but with some faith-based elements to it, which is really exciting. Bob,
well, you're also a minister. You're also an author. You're also.
They see that part. That's the obvious.
I don't know if they see it.
That's true.
I have operated a painting business for 44 years. I started in a 1964 Volkswagen Bug with surf racks, and now we are a mature company all these years later. I also am now an author. And I have a podcast with my friend Shawn, and I am living testimony that things can happen, dreams can happen later in your life. I was 57 years old when I co-authored my first book with my friend Danny, and then Shawn. Now I'm 61, almost 62, and we're doing a podcast, and we wrote our book Wired to Hear. So, for all these years, God had prepared me for this. So if you're getting antsy, like when's God going to do this, you can just remember Bob. It took him a while.
But in the context of what Bob was saying with the painting company, they paint humongous structures that are unimaginable. So it's very successful and fun to watch. And it's awesome to watch Bob then, out of all that experience for those decades, consult churches and ministries and especially businesses, and especially at ground level. Like he does a lot of ground level stuff the first 5 to 10 years of something. And it's a before and after moment to have a Bob Hass in your life. So we so appreciate you, Bob, and who you are, which is amazing. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Here we got some questions. Do you have any good resource recommendations for Christians working in government?
Well, I don't.
I'm trying to think of the resources that I would think of. It depends. There's a lot of faith coalitions amongst whether you're a senator or a congressperson or whether you're working in government. A lot of it centers around DC that I know of, though. But there's some national groups that work in prayer, and I would have to look him up, Amy, and try and figure out again. I mean, I've been connected to him. I've actually spoken at a lot of groups that do stuff with politics, and my brain is locked.
I get Amy, if you could be a little bit more specific, what you're looking for. In a broad sense, it's hard to answer that question. So maybe you could give us a little more specificity, and then we could think about it. But because both Shawn and I know people who are in the political realm, but I don't exactly know what.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find questions, Bob. We don't have a lot of questions today. Why don't we do a giveaway while we're going to be looking for questions, because we only have about 10 minutes left. So let's do a giveaway. Here's the criteria for the giveaway today. If you want a Wired to Hear book, Bob, show them the book, because you got it right behind you. I had mine right here and it's gone. Show them the book. This is our Wired to Hear book. This is going to help you understand why you're wired to hear God for your career or place of influence, or your business, your life. And it's a brilliantly thought through book. I love this book. Bob and I spent a lot of time on it in just conversations and writing, developing the themes. And if you need this book for your life right now, because you are in a career-altering decision-making process, that your life has turned into a fork in the road. If that's you and you're on Facebook or our platform, or you're on YouTube, please respond. I need that book because I'm at a decision-making time, and my process has changed, and I need God to define it. Make sure to say, I need it. And it doesn't matter where you're at in the world, we can ship it to you. So if you're saying, that's me, say, I need this, please, because I'm in that place. We have a few people right now, Bob. Who are you going to pick?
Well, we've got some good questions coming through now. Well, I just saw Janice Hasayo said, I need it on Facebook. So
awesome.
Sorry,
okay, we have Janice. Our team's going to make themselves known to you and reach out to you right now, private message you. And then we have Colton Williams. He's saying, I need this book on YouTube. Colton, you got it. This is yours, brother. And so then we, on our platform right now, let's see who we got on our platform. We have Steve Bukowski. Steve Bukowski, this is your book. So those of you who are on our platform, we're so glad to sow into you as well. And then we have some good questions. Let's go right for questions. Thanks, you guys, for telling us you needed the book. And stay tuned for another giveaway next Thursday. Go for it, Bob.
So I love this question from Lindsay Labram on Facebook. What if you really, 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 I can just hear her. What if you really, really, really love ministry, but God has asked you to be obedient to the call of working a mainstream career? Well, Lindsay, welcome to the 99% of us who are working in the mainstream career. And you can really, really love and be effective in your ministry after work and during work because of your character. And I think God's called you there for a reason. He's put you in a place, and you have incredible favor in the area that you're at, and you can expand your favor if you. In our Wired to Hear book, we talk about all these different ways that God speaks to us. And one of the ways is for people who might not even know him, who maybe you work with, who are speaking to you, and you're speaking back and forth to them. So I'm just really glad you're in a mainstream career, and I'm really glad you love the Lord and love ministry. And for me, I worked in my job for 45 years before I started doing ministry related stuff more formalized.
I love that. And I think, we're not just trying to get to a place where we're following favor. We're trying to follow the anointing and appointment of God in our lives and honor that. And one of the chapters in our book, Wired to Hear, is when our process is different, because we're looking for God results. So we have a different way that God leads us, and he's going to lead you in ways you don't always want to go. But man, the destination of where you get to, you're going to be so grateful for. And I think of the destination that Bob's gotten, or that I've gotten in our lives and with our wives and our families. And I'm just so grateful that we followed God, because it's not the path I would have taken at all. I would have jumped ship a long time ago out of certain projects or certain efforts, but I had to be obedient. I've even kicked and screamed on the way sometimes, or dragged my feet, but I've always said yes. I always end up in the right heart, but there's a process to it that I wouldn't have chosen. And being led by a good father, no matter how good he is, sometimes you want to lead yourself. You just want to take the reins. And And I would just say, give him the reins. If he's calling you to business,
Yes.
honor it until it's time. And let's say you only got to do 5 full-time years of ministry in your whole life. They're going to be the most glorious time. You'll love it. Let's say you don't get to do any in your whole life. You're going to look back and find out it didn't matter because of what God did have you do. So I think it's really important to look at it that way.
Jason on
YouTube.
And YouTube says he feels like he's going through late in life as a 34-year-old, and I'm smiling, Jason. I'm smiling because you have your entire career before you. It's so awesome, and a little bit down. I think you just put one foot in front of the other. Yeah. Shawn is so good at this. He puts his head down. How long did it take you to write this book that you just turned in?
Well, this one was easy. This was like 2 months.
Okay, 2 months. But I'm just saying, for 2 months, you put your head down, one foot in front of the other. And sometimes God calls us to this, to just this discipline, this obedience, grit, determination, work ethic. And I think, we all can enter into that.
Totally. Paul Tenen from YouTube also asked, what criteria do you both use to determine who you allow to speak into your life? And I think, we both are what Bob calls covenant people, which means we're looking for the relationships that God brings in. Mm-hmm. And then we're looking for our value of how much we feel the safety of that person's heart culture and internal culture and God culture. We're looking for their decision-making process. Have they led good decisions? I have people ask spiritual questions too that I would never ask financial investment questions about. I had people who I would ask family questions to about how to be a good dad or husband that I would never ask how to run my organization to. And so there's different people are going to speak out on different levels. The problem is a lot of us get involved with like a church or a ministry or a mentor that we think they should be all things to us. And so they'll say something with the same strength that they say something that was really meaningful, and we'll follow it, not realizing that they're not an expert in that area. So you got to look for people who are experts in the areas you're getting advice from, or that are thriving or living a good life in that area. And if somebody's not, then they're going to look back at you and go, why'd you follow me? I'm no further than you are. And you'll realize that once you get older, the older you get, the more you realize like, who am I getting advice from in the first place? Am I going after people who are killing it, winning in life? Or am I going after people who I like because their image or whatever, And so it's really important to do that. But we're covenant people. Like, we asked Bob and Lauren into our lives, and then it was a fast process, but a slow process to really let them in fully, and vice versa, just because you take time, you get to know people, you get to know their values and who they are. And so I think for us, it's, for me personally, it's like we're looking for when God opens our heart, and then to build a real quality relationship before we go to level 10.
Yeah, Paul, that's a great question. Trust. I remember being a young believer and thinking that, everybody, if somebody wanted to pray for me, I had to let them pray for me. And I remember, I don't know, a number of years ago, this woman who I didn't know at all, and came up to me and had this kind of crazy look in her eye. And she said, "Can I pray for you?" And I said, "No." And she stopped. "What do you mean no?" And I was like, "No, if you'd like to pray for me at your house, that's fine. But I don't know you. And right now I'm not accepting, prayer from people that I don't know." And it felt really good to be able to put that kind of boundary up because, for me, like Shawn said about being a covenant person, I need to trust people. And I think all of us, Shawn and I, our families, all the listeners have been burned by people, in the church and maybe in our families because, we maybe put too much trust in a person that wasn't safe. So, I'm very careful about that.
I love that. And some of you, that's a counterculture to what you've been taught. It's like we go to a prayer line and we open our hearts to anybody to pray for us. And that's okay. It's okay but then you have to also have a high boundary that says probably what they're saying will only be partial truth and not even good, not even useful. And I've gone to some of the revival spots where people are supposed to be so anointed, and I've gone up for prayer and they don't know me by reputation or anything. And I've had some bad prayer at times. It's happened. I'm sure I've given bad prayer at times to people I don't know because we're not in sync relationally. We pray the best for the people we're in sync with. And so to allow someone and then do the hard work of relationship is important. So we have the long-term committed relationships. We have a really good question right now from Joanne Lopez Valerio from Facebook. She's saying, we're new, but when do you know when to move forward in investments and when you're just listening to the investment culture? And this is a great question.
Oh, can I just answer this really quick?
Please.
Like, if you start seeing things on TV, if you start seeing things in the news, if you start hearing all your friends talk about it, and I will say, like, this happens all the time with gold. You'll never
Yeah.
hear anything about gold,
Or
but when
cryptocurrency.
gold
Yeah.
starts reaching its all-time highs and everybody's talking about it, that's not the time to buy. The time to buy is when gold has shrunk back a little bit, or any other investment. And
Yeah.
that's my first thing. The second thing is do research. Find somebody that you trust. Again, we go back to the safety and trust, a financial advisor that you would trust, who understands your financial picture, and then do your research.
Yeah, I would say, I was invested in commodities for 15 years and I only barely got ahead, except for a few times when I sold out at the right time. I feel like I had some discernment on it, especially with silver. I got out of silver a couple times when it was just the right time. And it was just enough money to like really bolster what I was doing. So to create more real estate projects and stuff. And so commodities are a lot of fun, but they're very, just like the stock market, just like cryptocurrency. And just like any kind of investments, they're just crazy. They're crazy at times. They can go down in a day. You could lose everything. A lot of people are saying invest into Dogecoin because Dogecoin, it's going to go to $1 because Elon Musk is going to be on Saturday Night Live, and it actually went from 57 cents to 29 cents or 32 cents right after it was on there. So a lot of people were buying all this Dogecoin, and they lost a ton of money because the hype and excitement. And some people were even putting God spins on our words. I know in the prophetic culture, people who like to hear God love to practice it loudly with people around them. So what I do when people are learning how to invest with God and they're trying to discern markets is to get educated, like Bob was saying, in the real market and practice it. If you're doing stocks, bonds, or not bonds, stocks or commodities or cryptocurrency, practice listening to God if you're going to do it in a prophetic way for a year on paper before you do it for real.
Right.
And we've had a lot of friends who were excited about it do that, especially young people. And they realize I'm really bad at this. I need to get a lot more education, but they're also getting education while they're doing it the whole time. And almost every single one of them said they would have lost a ton of money if they had invested real money. So do it for a year as a hobby and see if God's in it for you. And if he's not, and you have a lot to learn, think of it as a 30-year career, not a 1 year, and start real small. So, and that's some of the hard things where people get excited. You get the excitement of you buying. It's like you go to the multi-level marketing pitch and you buy the whole product line. You're like, what am I going to do with this when you get home? Like it's that thing of like there's something like a fear that I'm going to miss out, a fear that I'm not going to get the right crypto, a fear that I'm not going to get the gold at the right number. And you have to get out. That's all emotional trash that is not going to help you with God make wise investment decisions for the rest of your life. And Christians are the worst in some ways at it because we put a faith spin on it. And you got to stay out of the faith spin. And if it feels like a spin, it is a spin.
Yeah, I agree. And so when we're dealing with investments, be patient, be wise, do research, find people who are professionals or friends who really understand, what they're doing.
Well, Bob, we are at our end. We went 34 minutes here, but I'm so glad that everybody joined in today. Thanks for letting us do the giveaways. And also, why don't you put in the comments right now as we end, and as we're going to play a little video, how we could be praying for you, and our team will be praying for you guys. Thank you so much for joining on YouTube, Facebook, and our platform. And we look forward to being with you next week. Bob, thank you.
Next week. Thank you, Shawn. See you everybody next week.
Okay. And listen to the podcast tomorrow. It's going to be a good one.